Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker. Revolutionize your health with Revero. Struggling with type 2 diabetes, obesity, or autoimmune conditions? Revero offers a revolutionary approach to treating chronic diseases. With personal low-carb nutrition plans, remote biomarker monitoring, and 24/7 access to expert medical providers and coaches, Revero helps you address the root cause of your health concerns. Be part of the future of healthcare. Join the waitlist today at Revero.com and take the first step towards lasting wellness.
And I had a buddy that was telling me nonstop, you need to try the Carnivore Diet. I did it for 75 days and I was like, well, I feel better. I look better. I have more energy. I'm not dead. And I was always hungry though on the vegan diet. Like it wasn't like I could just, like I always needed more food. I was never like fulfilled. Like being on the Carnivore Diet, I eat till I'm full almost every single meal. And I find that it's very freeing. I have a six pack now. I never had a six pack in my life. And I eat till I'm full every single meal. I'm stronger now. I never really had a bad anxiety problem, but I don't ever feel anxious ever anymore. Bitcoin, like it opens your eyes to facts like, well, what is fiat money? What is in our food? Like, what is the foundation of all this stuff that are we just believing what we're being told? When you start going down these rabbit holes, you're like, wait, what's a seed oil? Without my health, Bitcoin means nothing. And when she left is when I started becoming and started the Carnivore Diet. So by the time she got back, I was full on carnivore. And she's like, what the heck happened to my boyfriend?
Welcome. Today we got Nick with us, going to share a success story with us. Nick, thanks for being here. Appreciate it, man.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Where are you located? What part of the world are you in?
Yeah, I'm down in Southwest Florida, down in Naples.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Hopefully you guys just missed some hurricane stuff. Went a little north of you guys recently or something along those lines.
Yeah, a couple months ago.
Yeah, Naples is real pretty. I think it's got a real beautiful beach, and I was there a couple of years ago. Really, really nice place. I guess let's start out with you just telling us a little bit about your background.
Yes, I've been doing carnivore now for almost 2 years. How I got there was interesting. I used to be vegan for a little bit.
I've heard this before.
Yeah, this was years ago. And I just like beginning of 2022, I always worked out, but I couldn't lose the weight. And it wasn't really, and I just committed to a program called 75 Hard. And it was the first time in my life where I really said, you know, you have to stick to a diet for 75 days straight. And I had a buddy that was telling me nonstop, you need to try the Carnivore Diet. You need to try the Carnivore Diet. So it just perfectly aligned with that program. And I did it for 75 days. And I was like, I feel better. I look better. I have more energy. I'm not dead. And I just basically kept with it ever since then. And I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm 35. I can do everything I could do at 21, but better.
Okay. So basically it was an effort just to lose weight. Were there any other health issues going on that you could think of?
No, I didn't have any like crazy health issues or anything like that. It was more so, you know what? I've never really stuck to an actual diet. I'm doing this program, and part of the program is that you have to stick to a diet for 75 days straight. So I was like, what the heck? Why not try the Carnivore Diet? And actually, now that I'm thinking about how I even got introduced to you was through a podcast that you did with Saifedean.
Okay. So you're a Bitcoin man then.
Yeah. I actually met you at the Bitcoin conference a couple of years in Nashville.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
I work for the Bitcoin conference. So I'm leaving for Abu Dhabi tomorrow for our conference out there. So
okay.
Happy 100, by the way.
Yeah, they punched 100K pretty nice. I think it's over 100, went up to 103, almost hit 104. People are very happy about that. I'm speaking there at that Bitcoin conference again next year in Vegas. So it'll be fun to meet up with everybody again. Let me ask you, let's go back to the vegan days. What prompted you to do that? What was the rationale behind trying that?
I watched a documentary called What the Health. So not to talk too much about Bitcoin, but at the same time, like it did lead me to the Carnivore Diet in a way, because real money or real food, hard money, real money, it kind of like there's a correlation there. And What the Health, when you follow the money, you realize who's funding these documentaries, who's profiting off of these agendas. But that made me like, oh my gosh, meat's bad for you and all this other stuff. And I didn't really know what was going on. I was just believed what I heard at that point. And I started questioning everything, and now here I am. And yeah, vegan. I've heard your podcast with the one guy that was like the vegan god or lord, whatever. That was a great one.
Yeah, interesting. So when you did the vegan diet, what was the result? Did you feel somewhat better initially? Maybe you cut out some processed foods or what?
Yeah, correct. I definitely felt better doing the vegan diet, but I lost weight, but I wasn't gaining muscle.
Yeah, it makes sense. You think about why a vegan diet might work for weight loss is because you just don't absorb as much nutrition. That's really effectively what's going on.
Yeah.
Call that fiber ends up in the toilet and it takes a lot of nutrition with it. And so, yeah, you're technically absorbing less, but you're also absorbing less nutrition. And so a lot of people have to go through great, difficult, maybe more challenging strategies to not make that happen. And your body composition, so maybe you lost weight, but you just maybe same body composition, just maybe smaller size, same level of body fat, perhaps that would happen.
Yeah, basically. I was losing weight just because I was also cutting out, like you said, a bunch of the other processed foods, which is a whole nother conversation when you get into the seed oils and all this other stuff. But I was just eating basically quinoa, avocado, almonds, and black beans, like for every meal. That's what I was eating back then. But that was such a long time ago. It feels like a lifetime ago. And then after that, I was in a relationship at that time and gained the weight. We just went out all the time, gained the weight. But yeah, and then I was always hungry though on the vegan diet.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like I always needed more food. I was never like fulfilled. Like being on the carnivore diet, I eat till I'm full almost every single meal. And I find that it's very freeing. And it's also, I think, less expensive eating a carnivore diet.
Yeah, you think about that. Isn't a vegan diet, if you're always hungry, it's great for the food business because it'll sell you more food constantly. You eat, you crap out your nutrition, you eat, you're hungry. It really spins that economic wheel in a way. And that's why I think we've seen some of these food companies realize that, hey, that's the way to continue revenue. Keep people hungry, constantly eating food, whether it's ultra processed or not. So that's a good model for that. But it's when you actually absorb your nutrition, it's weird how the hunger goes away. What do you eat these days? Since you said you've been on a carnivore diet for now around 2 years, what does it look like for you?
So that's a great question. I typically eat at around noon and 7 o'clock. So twice a day. And most of the days I eat a pound of ground beef and 6 eggs for lunch and a pound of ground beef and 6 eggs for dinner. And then I'll have some like raw liver throughout the day. And that's pretty much it. And then if I treat myself, meaning if I want to spend a little bit more money, because the economic way of the ground beef and the eggs, it basically costs me around 15 or 16 bucks a day, all in. If I eat steak, I like to go for the fatty steaks like picanha. That's my favorite cut. I'll eat that maybe 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah, so it sounds like twice a day, basically steak and eggs for the most part. I guess it's about your lunchtime then right now, your first meal. If you're in Florida, it's about noon there. So I've got
to change my schedule a little bit for you, Dr. Baker.
Well, I appreciate it. I've got a ribeye. I've got a big old ribeye cooking. I just got in from out of the country. And the thing that really struck me was I was down in Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands, which are part of Ecuador, in case people don't know that. But I had meat every day. I ate eggs every day, but the meat was much leaner. And that was more of a struggle. It was just, I was hungrier more because I wasn't getting the amount of fat that I was used to. So that was a bit of a challenge, but I made it through. It was only for a week or so, but I was so happy to get back home and eat a big old fatty steak, man. I was like, man, that's good. You've got scurvy. You've died of a heart attack. Probably your colon's fallen out. All of the above. No, have there been negatives up to this point, either from your own health standpoint, or maybe a lot of people point maybe social issues, but what's going on has been a downside to this, if any?
So the first, I remember in the beginning 2 years ago, there was like a week or two where just like food was just going straight through my system and it was like my stomach was hurting. But then since then, I haven't had any health issues. I think I may have gotten a cold for maybe 12 hours once in the last 2 years, and I kicked it really quick. I assume that's because my immune system's working really well because of what I'm feeding it. Social issues, I don't like to go out to eat. I hate going out to eat, honestly. I can make a steak here at my house just as good as out, and I'll basically spend a fifth of how much I'll spend than going out to eat. So it is hard. Oh, let's go out to eat. No, I'd rather just not have mashed potatoes with my steak and spend less money and waste the mashed potatoes. And then I am in a relationship, and that's one thing I'm trying to like get her to eat more meat because I've seen the benefits and I've read about the benefits. I've learned about the benefits following you and other people in the industry, but that's hard sometimes.
Okay. Trying to get other people to maybe see what you've seen, which is interesting. It certainly sounds like it works for you. So you said you've always worked out. How has that impacted your ability to put on muscle or lose body fat or perform in the gym or wherever?
Yeah, so I'm actually leading up to it. I was like, I've always worked out, like I'm worked out hard, but I guess once I started carnivore, like the weight in my stomach just like I have a six pack now. I never had a six pack in my life, and I eat till I'm full every single meal. I'm stronger now. I can sprint. I sprint. I run. I ruck. I work out all the time. I'm never like My recovery is really well. And I assume it's because I'm giving myself protein and fat, and my body's using that and the nutrients. And like you said, I'm not pooping out the fiber. I'm keeping the nutrients, and my body's absorbing them. So in the gym, I'm as strong as I've ever been. And I love going to work out. And I want to continue doing it. And I want to work out harder and more. And I see you as you're a little older than I'm 35, and I want to be, when I'm your age, I want to still doing the sprints. I want to still do the explosive workouts. I don't want to feed my body the right fuel so I can continue to do that throughout my entire life.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to do. It's just consistency over time is what it takes. I've been very fortunate that I've been able to be in a position where I could do that over the years and to continue to do it. I think you're crazy not to in many ways.
For sure.
So what about like the mental side? Have you noticed a difference in mental acuity, function, cognitive ability, that type of stuff?
I haven't, not that I never really had a bad anxiety problem, but I don't ever feel anxious ever anymore. So it's not big. And when I do feel it, I feel like I can handle those situations better than I could prior, but it's not like something I ever had a huge issue with before.
Yeah, fair enough. A lot of people, that's interesting. There's a recent paper published on animal-based ketogenic diets, which are essentially carnivore, showing anxiety resolving quite quickly with this situation. And it may have to do with just more stable energy sources and probably some other mechanisms. So the Bitcoin thing, has carnivore in any way impacted your Bitcoin experience? I know there's a lot of Bitcoin people that are carnivore. For some reason, there's some vegans in there too, which kind of makes me laugh.
We're still working on that.
Working on those guys. Has that impacted you in any way? Because a lot of people will talk about a parallel between the way we look at the monetary system and the so-called fiat currency, the paper money that it's not really attached to anything of value anymore, versus Bitcoin. And look at the food the same way. The fact that we're basically printing food more or less with cheap, poor nutrition food, and then comparing that to beef as something that's actual value. So what are your thoughts on the analogies or the comparisons there?
I think it just makes a lot of sense. And it's one of those things where you don't have to overcomplicate it. The food industry right now, they've lied to us for so many years about, just like, I was just in Amsterdam in October, and you see the food that they feed their citizens, and they don't poison their citizens. But in America, we are allowed to have those same different foods, and we're allowed to eat them. And so what are these things that we're putting into our body? It's basically fiat food. And Saifedean wrote a book called the Fiat Standard, where he talks about fiat food. There's just a lot of correlations because Bitcoin is real, hard, verifiable money. And carnivore diet, carnivore food is real food. Like beef is real, not Beyond Beef. That's fake, which is fiat. Bitcoin, carnivore. There's just a lot of correlation there. And I meet a lot of people in the industry like yourself that are carnivores. Some of them are animal based. So they have the fruit and the honey. I've tried that. The fruit and the honey is like a gateway drug to me. So I just get out of sight, out of mind. I don't need it. If I have some, I want more of it. So I just don't touch it.
Yeah, it's interesting how that little dichotomy has sprung forth. There's some people that they like the fact they can have something sweet again. They like the fruit, they like the honey, and they justify it various reasons. Some probably truly do feel better that way. Others, basically, I'm not going to go too much into this here, but what has been anything surprising about going on this diet? Did you have apprehensions going in and saying you had your buddy that was cajoling you to try it? What were your concerns and apprehensions, and what did you find out?
But it was one of those things where things like align. Someone tells you to do something, you hear something else from someone else, and you just like start reading about it, and then you just do it. So by the time I got to the point where I'm going to do it, I didn't really have any concerns. It was more so, what the heck, why not? Because again, like, he was telling me about it. Then I listened to the podcast that you did with Saifedean, and at that point was like, all right, I'm starting this on January 1, 2022. There wasn't really any. And so part of the program that I started on January 1st, 2022 was 75 Hard. And part of the program is you have to read every single day. So the book I started reading was The Carnivore Diet, the book you wrote. So as I'm starting this diet, I'm learning about it. And a lot of the stuff is, it's not to get into like animals and vegan, like all that crazy stuff. But yeah, I wasn't really concerned about anything because I read the work and it made sense to me. It wasn't one of those things where the cows can eat the vegetables. Cows have multiple stomachs to be able to digest the vegetables. We only have one stomach, but they eat the vegetables for us. It's, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Like, why overcomplicate something?
Yeah. It's just when we look at nutrition, and I've made this point many times, what is the purpose of nutrition, human nutrition? Well, we want to obtain essential things like protein, like fat. We need an energy source, so that could be carbs or fat. We need vitamins, minerals, and we need arguably water, and that is provided very nicely in meat. And the other systems for doing that, if you say I'm going to get a plant-based diet, and yes, I can cobble together it may be adequate nutrition, but it's much more inefficient to do. And that's why, and I've mentioned this many times, but most animals that have ever been on the planet Earth have chosen a carnivorous sort of strategy just because it's a more efficient strategy. And I use the analogy of, if I'm going to build a brick house, it'd be nice to have bricks. Straw and mud might work, but it's a lot more work. And that's really the difference between kind of a plant-based diet and an animal-based. But as a surgeon, I've cut into a lot of people. We're made out of red meat. This is what we are.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we're more specifically, we're made out of a bunch of animal cells, and the ingredients to make animal cells are found in other animal cells. And so it's just a very simplistic, but I don't think it needs to be much more complicated than that. I know people like to make it that way and debate about this or that biomarker and this and that. And at the end of the day, it's like, doesn't matter that much. So where do you see, let me ask you this, because obviously the Bitcoin folks are pretty happy right now. They're saying, look, we've been laughed at, made fun of since whenever was it 2009, I think, or something like that, whenever it first initiated. And now that it's 100,000 plus and likely to continue to go higher and more, maybe the U.S. holds it as a strategic reserve asset and on and on. It's looking like it's going to come through. A lot of the Bitcoin folks will have a lot more influence now because they've got this sort of thing. Where do you think do you think a lot of them will have an interest in some of these other issues? A lot of people, you've seen the meme, Bitcoin fixes this, fix the money, fix everything else, but there is other work to be done. And I'm trying to tackle it from the healthcare side. Do you think there'll be people from the Bitcoin side that'll be interested in some of these other projects, I suppose, now they have more sort of meaning?
Yeah, if you look at it, just like this past election and who stood for what, you take Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for example, like he ran, and what I think connected with a lot of Americans was the whole Make America Healthy Again. And I remember not this past year in Nashville, but the year prior at the Bitcoin conference in 2022, he was actually there. And that was when he was announcing that he was going to be running for president, and that he was into Bitcoin already. And it's okay. So yeah, I definitely think it definitely resonates with people because Bitcoiners, we don't have okay, I need fast food. I need something really quick. We have a long time preference. So it's not about let's get a quick fix. Let's do the work and continue to do the work. And I don't need a result tomorrow, but I want in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years, in 5 years. Like you said, I'm laying a foundation with bricks, not with straws, because I want to build something that's going to last. And that's pretty much like the foundation of Bitcoin. We want something that's going to last forever, that's going to be able to stand an attack or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. It's, like I said, it's exciting to see where, I don't know, it seems like there's a lot more excitement about the future than the dread that might have been. And I think some of the election catalyzed a lot of that for some people anyway, depending on which side you are on. Some people are probably dreading what's going on right now, perhaps, but we'll see how things play out. I'm hopeful that we can change the population health as a whole. It's just sad to see so many sick people around there. And I think it's unnecessary. And maybe there's some combination of eating more steak and maybe Bitcoin has a role in that, I hope.
To keep going on that point, it does open your eyes, like Bitcoin, like it opens your eyes to facts. What is fiat money? What is in our food? What is the foundation of all this stuff? Are we just believing what we're being told, or are we like, because that's really what Bitcoin did for me. It made me question what I was told. It made me like, then I stumbled upon carnivore after Bitcoin. I was like, okay, who made the food pyramid? How was it created? And there was just questions that I had to ask. And when I asked, I wanted to get the answers to. When you start going down these rabbit holes, you're like, wait, what's a seed oil? Oh, wait, seed oils are a thing because it's cheaper for them to put that into the food and it lasts longer. So I always talk to my friends. I used to work in the service industry, and I remember I opened a restaurant this is 14, 15 years ago. And at the time when the restaurant first started, they used high quality ingredients. But remember, it's a business. So as a year went by, they wanted to make sure they could stay in business. Maybe we could cut some costs here and there. So maybe we don't use olive oil or butter. We can use seed oil or vegetable oil and trim a little bit of money there because it'll help it'll help us make a little bit more money. And you sacrifice the health to make more money, and it shouldn't be that way. Like our health, without my health, Bitcoin means nothing. Like my health is more important to me than Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's the truth. Health is wealth, and like I said, you see it. Some of these people that are super wealthy have got access to everything, the latest medical. They've got private chefs. There's no excuse. They can have trainers. They can do whatever they want, and yet they're still unhealthy. And it doesn't make sense to me at all. I'll use guys like Bill Gates as a perfect example. We've all seen him walking around with his man boobs and big flabby belly, and he's, dude, man, come on, what's the deal?
You don't want to take advice from him? You don't want health advice?
No, not from that. No, I tend to take advice from people that I look up to and aspire as far as for that aspect. He might be good at financial advice because he's done well with that. But for health advice, no thanks. What do you find, I guess, you said that, are you able to, before you've been, like I said, you're on a vegan diet, you're always hungry. Now you're on a carnivore diet, your appetite's in check, you don't have a bunch of cravings and stuff like that. Do you find that we've got this concept that obesity is this genetic disease, and that the only solution that we have now at this point is to inject everybody with Ozempic shots, so on and so forth, which has that changed your opinion on chronic disease and obesity and things like that with your experience?
I think, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I think that's a choice. I think those are all results of lifestyle. You are your actions. It's just they manifest over time. Like you don't just become obese. You just aren't obese. You become obese over time because of your lifestyle and your actions. And from an obese person to not become obese, like you are only, like you just posted on your Twitter earlier, you're only 251 pounds. So now you're just overweight. You're not longer obese.
Yeah, you saw that. That's funny. I posted as a joke. I'm clearly not overweight or obese, at least. But yeah, technically, whenever I'm over 253, I fall into that BMI category of obese, and so I snuck into the overweight category again. So
I feel based on like the Ozempic and everything else, like that goes on like in this culture, everyone looks for a quick fix and they don't want to do the work. Not everyone, but there's a lot of people that just want a quick fix, and they don't care about what's the results maybe 20 years down the road because I did this. It's more so I just want to lose weight now. I don't care how it happens, but is it going to be good for me long term? So for me, those are things like I don't want to do it the quick way. I want to do it the way that it will help me live longer, and not just live longer, live healthier while I live longer. Because I don't want to be old and like my grandmother had dementia and Alzheimer's. And those things, like, wait, you mean I could eat a diet that's going to help me maybe not have to experience that? And there's correlation and studies that show that. But yeah, you know what? I don't need to go eat a freaking Reese's bar or a Snickers bar when I can. So I mean, it's just not worth it to me. Like I want to live old, but be able to work out while I'm old. Like RFK, that's somebody I want to, like, maybe when I'm 70 years old, I want to be able to work out still and push around weight. I see people in the gym that are older than I am, and I'm like, good for you. Like you made your health a priority. You didn't just and we are our actions. And then I respect that. And those are things that I want to also accomplish in my life.
Yeah, we get a limited time on Earth, and we don't want to spend a third of it, half of it being incapacitated in many ways. And I see that all the time. Many people are. How much do you eat a day? And what do you weigh, if you don't mind sharing that?
Yeah. So I fluctuate between 183 to 190. Depends on the time of day. Like I don't really weigh myself religiously, so I couldn't tell you exactly, but it's typically around there for the last couple of months. And like I mentioned, I typically, all in 2 pounds of ground beef and then basically a dozen eggs a day cooked in butter.
Okay, so that's a decent amount of food. That's 300 grams of protein or 250 grams of protein, something like that. And do you find that a lot of people say that's a boring diet, man? What do you do about that?
That's what I like. It's one of the things I like about it. It's some of the most successful people in the world. I think it's Mark Zuckerberg. He wears the same thing every single day because it's one less choice he has to make. So it keeps his mind free and doesn't have to make those kind of choices on a day-to-day basis. I like not having, I'm okay with it, to be like, it's fine with me. It's easy for me. It's all right. I think of it, what I was eating like before. What am I going to have to eat? Chipotle, is it going to be Chipotle today? Is it going to be ale? What is it going to be? Where am I going to go? What do they have there? And I didn't used to cook at home. There's something about making your own meal. I cook my meals fresh every single meal. So I'll cook you typically make them into like burgers. So I'll cook my burgers and my eggs fresh and I eat it. And there's something about creating something, enjoying what you created and just being thankful for it, other than having somebody else make it for you and it being, oh, it might taste, let's be real, chocolate cake tastes delicious. It's not like we don't like the way it tastes, but is it worth putting that into your body, knowing what it, like sugar's effect on what it leads to down the road, whether it's diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, and all these other things that are correlated to excessive sugar and all this other stuff. That's how I feel about that.
I have to admire your ability to not only do the interview, but also type responses to the questions that the people in the audience are sending your way. I appreciate that. So that's quite good. So you said you have a partner, a girlfriend, whatever.
We've been together for 3 years.
3 years. Was she with you when you were vegan? No, it sounds like not, maybe.
No, she wasn't with me when I was vegan, but she was with me before I started carnivore.
Okay.
So it's fun. It's a funny story. She's Colombian. She went to Colombia for a couple of months. And when she left is when I started started the carnivore diet. So by the time she got back, I was full on carnivore. And she's, what the heck happened to my boyfriend?
Had you lost weight or something in the interim? So she
lost weight, but I also we used to cook together. We used to go out to eat a lot more. So that is one of the challenges, like being in a relationship with someone that doesn't eat the same diet as you. Because let's go out to eat. It's like I mentioned earlier, I don't want to go spend $70 on an 8-ounce filet. You know what? I don't even like fillets. I want a ribeye or a picanha or a New York strip that's fatty. So that is a challenge.
Yeah, it is a thing when you're carnivore. You're like, man, I go out there and spend 50, 60, 80 bucks on a steak. I could probably have 5 at home for the same price. It probably tastes better. And I guess the only place that makes sense for us carnivores are those kind of Brazilian churrascarias where you just go in there and I'm going to drop 50, 60 bucks, but I'm going to eat 5 pounds,
Exactly. That's exactly the places I like to go out to eat because I can get my money's worth. Because if you go to another place, like you said, you spend $70, you get asparagus on the side. I don't want the asparagus. What comes with it? I don't want it.
Yeah, it was funny. I'll tell you guys a funny story. I was just in Ecuador and we were with 2 other couples and they set up the vacation. It was wonderful. I mean, went all this kind of great scuba diving and saw the Galapagos Islands and all the crazy animals. But one of the nights was a restaurant, which was considered one of the top 50 restaurants in the world. The person was really, they're foodies. They're really excited. So I said, I'll go. And I ate the food that was there. And it was literally like foam. Every ingredient was like, this is some foam of this, an essence of this. And it was like, there was no food. There was like no actual food. I was starving by the time I got done. We were looking for a steakhouse, but they were all closed. So I basically starved that night. And it was just, like I said, I did that just to be nice because they had done all this effort. And actually, even the person who booked it was like, this was not very good. One thing I had Llama jerky powder. They made jerky out of llama and then they powderized it and coated it on something. And it was like, it was hilarious. We just laughed about all the darn foam we were getting. I don't know. They must have had a discount on the foam machine. And they were like, this has got foam and this has got foam. And we're like, there's no fun. Why are you feeding me air? I want some food. But yeah, so I don't generally like to go out to eat unless it's to a nice steakhouse and I'm willing to spend the money because that's, like I said, you probably like, man, I could be stacking sats than spending
exactly. So I'm very analytical. So I do the math. So I know exactly if I spend $16 a day and I do that for 7 days a week, because that's 2 pounds of ground beef, because Aldi, they sell grass-fed ground beef, $85.15 for $5 a pound. And the pasture-raised eggs are about $5.20 there. So if I just do that for an entire week, I'm spending around $120 a week. If you go to Chipotle now, which my girlfriend loves, it's $12 for one bowl.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be enough food. I'll still be hungry later in the day. So I have to do that maybe twice a day. So I'm saving money. Now, if I were to make a steak every meal, I would probably be spending a little bit more, but I'm sure in the long run it would save me money because my health would be better and I wouldn't be going in to the doctors or anything like that or having any of those other side effects that come from eating the standard American diet, which is vilifying meat.
Yeah. And I was raised, I was born 1967, so raised in the 70s, 80s when I was getting into high school. And so that's when the whole demonization of fat commenced. So my whole adult life has essentially been red meat is bad, fat is bad for you. And I grew up with that. And then the fact that I went to medical school, became a doctor, really it's more of a disadvantage because then you're even further indoctrinated into that. You're propagandized formally, and all of a sudden you think you're the learned one when the reality is no. You've been fooled in many ways. Do you find that, like you said, you've been doing this for 2 years. I've been doing this now. This is my 8th year of carnivore. Are you finding that more and more people are accepting of this message than you maybe when you started even 2 years ago?
Yes, yeah, 100%. It's the same thing with Bitcoin. When it's at $16,000 a couple of years ago, they're like, "Oh, you're an idiot. It's a scam." But then they see like the proof of work, meaning they see the results. Something you're doing is working. What are you doing? So yeah, again, I'm from the looks perspective, I feel like I have a six pack. I'm in shape. I have muscle, like all these muscles could never see before the diet. Now they're visible. So people are asking like, what did you do? How did you do it? What do you do? What do you recommend? So people are waking up and seeing, and I just feel like that's the whole culture in general is waking up to that as well, just because I think that's so good for our society with what RFK stood for with Nicole Shannon and then the Cali Means and all these people that are like really care about making America healthy again, because at the end of the day, again, health is wealth. And without a healthy country, and you start hearing about the statistics that I don't know, I can't repeat them off of my head, but like they were saying, most people aren't even healthy enough to fight in a war in the army. So it's a very like sad path that we could have been going down, but now like but people voted opposite against that. They voted that we want our children to be healthy. We want to feed our citizens the right food and bring light to all this corruption that's been going on since like you mentioned, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah, one of the things about the Bitcoin, if you want to call it a movement or whatever, is they're the so-called plebes or plebs, however you want to pronounce that, and that has been the driving force for this. It's a very much a grassroots collective. There's a couple of people like the Sailors and some of the other companies that people that have the maybe a little bit more sort of recognition on that, but it's really a grassroots driven movement in many ways. And I think the same thing applies to the health movement. It can't just be RFK and a few other people doing it. It's got to be a market driven phenomenon. Yeah. I think that's what's going to happen. And I keep telling people, hey, it's great. Maybe your politician of choice got elected, but you still got to do the work. We also have to do the work, right?
Yeah, they can't eat for you. They can't work out for you. You can lead a horse to the lake, but you can't make the horse drink the water.
I'm just thinking, and just to talk about things that are going on right now. You just probably saw the CEO of United Healthcare, the largest insurer in the United States, was just murdered. And some people say it was a hit or a disgruntled something, but people are really pissed off about the health. This is a symptom of people being, and of course it's a tragedy and no one's advocating for violence and of that nature, but it's a symptom of the frustration that people have around the healthcare system. And if we come to the point where we're executing CEOs of companies, that's a real problem. It indicates, obviously, whether it's a paid hit, and this is I don't know. I can't tell you.
You don't know, but I saw the video.
Yeah, so we're in a situation where people are really frustrated one way or the other. And this is, like I said, this is just something that's obviously tragic, but it's indicative of a real problem we have here. And hopefully we can figure a way out of that. What do you see with regard to the future of Bitcoin? I've talked to some of the people I've known Safe for years, Robert Breedlove, some of these other guys that have a lot of thought about that. But as far as we've got countries like El Salvador, which has obviously turned it around, their president Kelly is very much a proponent of that. There's some other people that are doing that. Do you see it becoming a world standard currency? Where do you think it's going to go? Here's a question. Do you think the dollar has to fail for it to succeed, or can they coexist?
They can coexist. They've been coexisting for the last 14 years. They both can work. It's just one's getting worth more and one's getting worth less.
But it
But
becomes a zero-sum game, right? As Bitcoin goes up in value, the dollar essentially goes down. Or like some people, it's funny how some people will view Bitcoin rate based on its US dollar equivalent, whereas other people are looking at the other way. The Bitcoin is here and everything else is being compared against it as the standard, as say that he might use.
So if you think of it like Bitcoin's getting worth more, US dollars getting worth less, but if you think of the next step down, the peso's getting worth it's getting inflated more than the US dollar. So there's other currencies that are going to fail way before the US dollar would fail because we have a currency that is going down in value, but it's not going down in value as fast as like the Argentinian peso or the Nigerian dollar or whatever they use. Their currencies are going they're going the wrong way a lot faster than ours. But I think eventually the US dollar will probably not be the world reserve currency just because it's literally only, what is it backed by? People will say the military, the strongest military. It's like, all right, but what's it backed by? We can just print it out of thin air. What's the value of what is it really backed by? And that's one of the biggest misconceptions about Bitcoin is, oh, it's on the internet. It's not backed by anything. No, it's actually backed by a lot like real world energy that you have to spend a lot of energy to mine the Bitcoin, to run the network. And it's not just free. It's very intense. One thing I like that Michael Saylor always says is like, he bought the house that he lives in maybe 100 years ago may have been worth like $100,000. That same house today is worth $20 million. What's changed? Did the house get worth more? Did the dollar get worth less? The dollar it got worth less and they don't buy you as much. So you need more of it. So I just think moving forward, every country is going to have to put some of their money and have it on as like a reserve asset, like Trump proposed at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. And if you're not first, El Salvador will benefit from US doing it. Whoever front runs US is going to benefit from US doing it. Whoever does it first benefits from whoever comes after it. But it's for everyone. It's not just for you. It's not just for me. It's for every single person, and everyone can play. Everyone can operate. Everyone in the world can buy Bitcoin. Not everybody in the world can buy New York real estate. Everyone can buy this same asset, which is awesome. And it's unheard. It's the first of its kind.
Remind me, because you said one time you were in a restaurant business and you saw the problems with making that happen. What are you doing in the Bitcoin space? Is that your full-time vocation right now or occupation? Is I work in Bitcoin now?
Yeah. So I go to, like I mentioned, I'm going to Abu Dhabi tomorrow for the conference that we have there. I was in Amsterdam for the one in October, where I met you in Nashville. We have the one in Vegas coming up. So I help with all, if you remember, like remember the deep where the whales are at the conference? Mm-hmm. So me and my colleague Carly, we work together.
Yeah, you guys were in that waiting area there was behind. There was a food, and then there was the little place. I think somebody was it Cindy Llama spoke on one of the stages back there. I think I remember. Yeah, Cynthia Llama, Cindy, I can't remember. Cynthia Llama. She's the senator from Wyoming that is pretty much a Bitcoin. Yeah, she's a Bitcoin bull. Yeah, so. You're going to, obviously, this is something you're very passionate about. You'll continue doing this stuff. Do you find, how much within the Bitcoin community, because just by definition, these people are all more open-minded. They tend to be maybe bigger risk takers, you might say, or some people would say it's risky not to do it at some point. Are they more open to carnivore? Are you comfortable sharing that with them rather than other folks?
Not necessarily. I'm comfortable with who I am, no matter who I'm around. I don't need to change who I am to make someone else or dislike me. I'm not ever really seeking anyone else's approval. But what I learned about, to answer your question about other Bitcoiners, they're open-minded, because to learn Bitcoin, you have to be open-minded. It's not just something you get. You have to actually dedicate and spend actual time to learn it. It's not something, oh, I understand Bitcoin. You actually have to understand by putting in the time to understand it. So yeah, most Bitcoiners are open-minded, and not just open-minded. They don't just believe everything they're told. Oh, the government cares for you. The dollar's great. The food pyramid. You should eat more bread. And these are all things that we question. We just don't take everything as law and gospel. Let's do the research. Let's do the work. We have an abundance of information now that we can go through to learn about everything or anything that we want. And that's one of the things I love most about Bitcoiners is that we're very open to learning, because every Bitcoiner has that in common, because no one knew about it until they put the time in to know about it.
We have a very complicated tax code, and you have CPAs and you have tax preparation specialists, and we have some of the financial stuff. There's always loopholes and tricks and things like that. And it requires a lot of knowledge to do that. But one of the things about Bitcoin is I was told safety says, hey, put away what you can afford and just hold it. Mike Bitstein, Mike Goldstein said the same thing. Hey, just hodl and dollar cost average. And you don't need a advanced degree to be successful in this. But like I said, you have an interest in it, and you're in. I guess the question is, what more do you need? You need to have all this knowledge. Maybe if you're going to set up a mining operation or you're going to have a node or something like that, that's important. But for the average person that says, I want to do Bitcoin, you can probably give them 2 minutes of advice and that's all you need. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, especially today. It's never been easier to buy Bitcoin. Whether you have Cash App, Venmo, Robinhood, Strike, Fold, River, there's so many different places to buy Bitcoin. And there's better practices. And the more what is typical, you start putting in like a percent of your net worth. And then as you put money in, you're like, what am I putting money into? And you start learning about it. And as you start learning about it, you start learning better practices. You don't tell someone immediately, you need to go run a node and start all this other stuff. They're going to be too scared. What is this person talking about? They're a lunatic. But if you start putting a little bit of your money into something and you're just like, all right, maybe I should learn a little bit more about what I'm putting my money into. And as you learn, you realize, oh, there's better practices. There's better places to store my money or my Bitcoin. But in terms of buying Bitcoin, if you have a Cash App, you can just go on Cash App and buy Bitcoin. If you're now with the ETFs that are open, if you have a stock like Fidelity account, you can just go buy BlackRock's ETF and get Bitcoin exposure. If you want more, if you want to be a little more risky, go buy MicroStrategy and get basically a levered Bitcoin play. But it's one of those things where you just dollar cost average and hold it. And like the Bitcoin, it's a long time preference. We're not here to make a quick dollar. We're here to make sure that when we have wealth that we can continue to transcend our lives and pass down to our children and their children, because you can't make more of it, right? If you could make more of it and it was easy to make, it wouldn't be worth anything. But that's what separates Bitcoin from a lot of these other coins and poop coins, you could say, that.
Yeah, it's safe. We'll call them all shit coins is what he would,
He's actually
the language, but yeah.
I don't want to say it, but now that you said it, he's actually doing on the conference in Abu Dhabi coming up. They're doing a debate, Bitcoin versus crypto. I'm really looking forward to that one because it's him and I forgot who else, but they're talking like Bitcoin versus crypto. It's going to be it's carnivore versus vegan.
Yeah, well, and Safe is certainly entertaining when he talks, and he doesn't pull any punches. I enjoy that. His books are quite entertaining in that regard. It's just he's quite and maybe it's the carnivore brain power that he's getting behind there. So maybe we can get some of these other Bitcoin people, maybe Sailor, we can convert him to carnivore or something like that. I don't know what his diet.
Do you know who Jack Mallers is?
I've heard the name, but I haven't met him. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys would have a good relationship. I believe he's carnivore now. Also, he's always talking about just eating beef and eggs.
Yeah.
He's a pretty Bitcoin OG as well. He's the one that actually worked with El Salvador that helped make the legal tender. He worked with Nayib.
Okay, I know there's a fellow by the name of Peter McCormick. Are you familiar with him? He's from the UK. Yeah, he's now on carnivore. In fact, he asked if I would come to the UK to do a podcast with him. And so next time I'm in the UK, I'll hopefully can do that. So we're seeing more and more people adopt that within all realms, quite honestly. It's not just Bitcoin, it's across the board, but certainly there seems to be maybe a higher adoption rate in that regard. Do you see one of the criticisms about Bitcoin is it's not very facile money. You can't go to the grocery store and buy a cup of coffee. You can in some places, but where do you think that's going to go? I know there's a Lightning Network, and I've never spent a single Bitcoin. I just hold it. I've just never had, and that's probably what most people are doing. But how are we going to transition to where it becomes more of a fluid form of money?
I don't think it needs to. If for some people, as an American, we don't need it to be a unit of account where we are spending it at a grocery store, right? Like, why would I but if you're in another country, we're very privileged to be in America. We can go to a bank, we can go put our money into a bank account. But if you're in another country where you don't have the ability to have a bank, how are you going to store your wealth? You're just going to keep dollars under your bed? These are real life problems for different people in different countries. So in terms of America, you can go buy, if I really wanted to buy something with my Bitcoin, I could right now. Maybe it's a gift card where I can go spend that gift card at the place I wanted to get to. But just like I was mentioning, the good gentleman I was just saying that Jack, and I'm very aligned with this also, he sells his Bitcoin 12 times a year, once a month to pay off his credit cards. So basically he spends money on his credit cards. And then at the end of the month, he'll sell amount of Bitcoin to pay off his credit cards. And then people are like, well, don't you have to pay taxes on it? So if I have to pay taxes, what's that mean? That means I made money. That's a good thing, right? So that his logic is, let me just live on credit cards. I earn my rewards, and then I'll just sell my Bitcoin 12 times a year to pay off my expenses. Who cares about having to pay taxes? Because paying taxes means I made money. It's not a bad thing. Since when did making money become a bad thing? If I would have kept that same money just in US dollars, I would have lost purchasing power. I would have bought less steak. I wouldn't have been able to I don't think it needs to become a thing where you need to be able to just go to a grocery store and transact with it in America.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where people are just used to it. You go to the store, pull out your credit card, you throw $5 in the counter, whatever, and you're just used to it. So it's a change in the mindset. Now, the concern that I think I saw recently, that I saw like a breakdown of where all the Bitcoin was, and whether it's held by individuals versus corporations and governments and so on. And there's 1.5 million of it is gone, disappeared off of the 21 that'll ever be there.
Yep.
So people are terrified of losing it. They're like, I've got $100,000 of Bitcoin and I lose it. So how do we overcome that?
Yeah, that is part of the journey. It's not, and that it was always going to be a risk, but it's also a risk. Let's say you had $1 million in a bank account and that bank goes out of business. You're only insured up to what, $250,000? So if you're a billionaire and you have, how many bank accounts do you need to be completely insured?
I suspect they have other. I think they keep it all in a lot of it's in capital. Right? I guess they don't keep $1 billion under the bank. They keep it in buildings and whatever.
But there's ways, and there's ways to do it. And also 1.5 million Bitcoin that have been lost. That's from the very beginning of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was worth 1 penny before it was worth anything, right? Like at that time when they lost the Bitcoin, it was not worth $100,000. It wasn't worth anything. So when they lost it, they didn't even care. And it wasn't until it started getting worth something that, oh my gosh, I lost my Bitcoin. I wish I had it now. But by the time it's like, oh, I lost 10 pennies. Who cares?
Right. Yeah, I get it. Gosh, we've almost run through an hour. Let me, Nick, share with us where people can find you, because I know you've got a company, maybe you have some social media. People might have an interest in this stuff. Where do they go?
I'm not really too big on social media. I don't really have a big presence on it. Sorry, but not a big social media person.
No, don't apologize. It's a good thing in many ways. If I didn't have to have it, I would probably not either.
I use Twitter, but I use it to look at other people that I'm not you're not going to follow. If you follow me, you're not going to get any cool gems. You'll probably see me retweet you.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing, man.
But I'll retweet, but I don't engage really or anything. But no Instagram, nothing like that.
I'll tell you what, have a good time in Abu Dhabi. Have you been before? I was there a couple of years ago. I thought it was pretty neat. They got a pretty cool museum I went to. I can't remember the name of the museum, but it's pretty cool. They got a huge, the mosque there is awesome, man. You got to go check out the mosque. It's like amazing. Whether, I don't care what your religion is, it's just a friggin' spectacle to see that, how just pristine that structure is. But yeah, anyway, and I guess I'll see you maybe in Vegas next May. So looking forward to that one as well. So.
Vegas is going to be here before we know it. It's going to be a huge event.
Yeah, very good. Well, 2025 is almost upon us. So anyway, Nick, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for sharing this little story with us, and I look forward to seeing you again. Appreciate it, man.
Likewise. Have a great day.